things aren't looking cash money for Biden, and they're looking pretty good for Trump. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, first of all, obviously the economy's gone to shite. Our entire political system is revealing itself to be inherently corrupt. Now, no, Donald Trump isn't going to save the day and drain the swamp. He is just as corrupt as any other of these politicians in Washington, D.C. But what's probably going to boost Trump and his numbers is the fact that we have these unending wars that are taking place, most notably in Ukraine and the genocide that is happening in Gaza. First, I want to pull up this article here from RT, just to own the libs. Only talks can stop the bloodshed in Europe. This is from Donald Trump. So, former U.S. leader and Republican candidate in this year's presidential election, Donald Trump, has reiterated his plans to pressure Russia and Ukraine into working out a peace deal if he returns to the White House. As it stands right now, and as I covered on yesterday's show, when you have Lindsey Graham Cracker pushing the Ukrainian parliament to lower the age from 27 now to 25, pretty soon they're going to probably lower that age to to 18 or younger, sending young people to go to the front line because they have to raise up 500,000 fresh troops to go ahead and fight Russia. This whole war could have been avoided. In an interview on the talk show America First with Sebastian Gorka, aired on Monday, Trump said negotiations are the only way to stop the bloodshed in Europe. We have to get both of them, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, together. And I'll say, you got to get this thing done, and you're going to get it done. I'll get them together. I'll make a deal, and it'll get done, Trump stated, adding that he knows both leaders well and knows exactly what to tell them to make sure that a peace deal is signed, because Trump wants people to stop dying. I want people to stop dying. Great quote right there. Trump likened the conflict to a chess match or a poker game, which he knows how to play. Of course, he knows how to play everything, right? He accused current President Joe Biden of failing to stop the conflict in the first place, saying Biden is not much of a chess player and that he was not right in placing all of the blame for the conflict on Putin. It should have never started. I did discuss Ukraine with Putin. It was the apple of his eye. He would have never done it, started the conflict when I was in office, he said. Of course, because nothing bad would ever happen with Trump in office, right? This is not the first time that Trump has called for peace talks to stop the Ukraine conflict. In May last year, he told CNN's Kaitlan Collins, remember her, that if he returns to power, he would end the war in one day. Good luck. But okay, hey, if he could pull it off, all the better. When asked how, Trump said that both Zelensky and Putin have weaknesses and they both have strengths, which he could use to settle the conflict. Zelensky responded at the time that Trump's comments were simply part of his political message. Now, it's one thing to talk about that, but now let's bring it up to Biden. Democratic donors warn Biden's support for Israel's war on Gaza may hand Trump the White House. More than 100 Democratic donors and activists on Monday warned U.S. President Joe Biden that his administration's unconditional support for Israel's catastrophic war on Gaza is increasing the chances that former President Donald Trump will win this year's election, to which we have to pause here and bring up the fact of the uncommitted voters. The uncommitted voters in Michigan and in Minnesota and a few other states have flexed their power as a voting bloc, as people who had it up to here with Biden and the hypocrisy of the Democrats. And what I will say to the uncommitted voters, you have shown the Democrats that you have power and that you're willing to not vote for Biden in the primary. But consistency is key. Joe Biden, according to recent reports, especially from the Washington Post, knew all too well and was informed daily about the bombings that Israel was doing on civilians way back in October. So he knew that hospitals were being bombed. He knew that civilian centers were being bombed. He knew refugee centers were being bombed. He knew that residential homes were being bombed. So he knew it. He was being briefed about it. So all this talk that somehow Biden's going to bring Netanyahu to a come to Jesus moment is never going to happen. And I understand why so many people are triggered by Donald Trump. But the bigger picture is this. The Democrats in 2020 praised Trump as praised Biden as the end-all, be-all person to return the soul back to America, that he was going to listen to people, that he was going to fight for all of these progressive policies and issues. And he didn't do it because that's not who Joe Biden is. Joe Biden is not going to follow through with any kind of promises for peace. The city of Rafah is going to get attacked. And even if it's not being attacked right now, we all know that civilians in Gaza are being shot at. When these trucks come in with food and medical aid, the people are still being shot at. Men, women, children are dying. So to the uncommitted voters, you might have to make the serious decision of voting third party or not voting at all. And I say this because both parties are owned by AIPAC. That's abundantly clear. But number two, no matter who sits in the White House, not only do corporations have the final say, but so does AIPAC. How do we break this system? We have to break away from voting for these politicians. We have to break away from being silent, obedient servants. And uncommitted voters, you have to flex your power. The Democrats don't own your vote. I want to pull this article up again. In a letter, the Biden supporters, who, according to the New York Times, including some six-figure donors because they're so special, six-figure donors, wow, condemned the Hamas-led October 7th attacks. Do you condemn Hamas on Israel, while also arguing that Israeli military actions are not achieving the goals for eliminating the Palestinian group or freeing the hostages. However, the ongoing military actions by the Israeli Defense Forces are not achieving those goals, the signatories argued. Instead, nearly all civilian structures in Gaza, including hospitals, schools, mosques, and civilian accommodation, are being systematically destroyed. Food, temporary shelter, medical aid are being prevented by the Israeli government, and Israeli extremists are being delivered to the civilian population. Gaza has become a humanitarian catastrophe. And unfortunately, I will not sit here and say that the international community is going to stand up and say, stop it. What I fear is going to happen because of the amount of destruction, Gaza is going to be further occupied by the Israeli forces, and the United States government won't say a single thing. And vote blue no matter who. Unfortunately, your old dog Biden won't even bark. He'll still be asleep, like you see in those old Tom and Jerry movies or in those old, Bugs Bunny cartoons of an old lazy dog just sleeping. That's what Biden is going to do. He is not going to fight back. And to everybody that's protesting out there, to everyone that's calling for the end of these wars, as they should, you're going to have to make a very serious decision on how you want to start using your power correctly. Because I do see Trump winning the White House. I do see Trump winning the general election. If these legal problems do pass and we continue on to the election, especially in November, then yes, there is a very good chance it's going to be Biden versus Trump. And there is a very good chance that Trump could successfully win this. And here's what people have to do now going forward. You just don't protest in front of Trump Tower. You have to protest and actually flex your power against these politicians, because Donald Trump, he's not the end-all, be-all bad guy. The overall system is the opponent. The overall politicians who remain in office for decades, even after the president is out of office, no matter who they are, Democrat or Republican, you have to start realizing that the real enemy is the system itself, the institution and the politicians that run it. You could protest in front of Trump Tower all you want. And yes, so many people will be clicking on it, giving you likes on social media. That won't change a thing. Trump Tower is a private building. And I'm only using Trump Tower here in Chicago as an example because I could see all those activist groups and protesters who've been asleep. And you have been asleep. You have been asleep. Rallying up everybody, telling everyone to meet somewhere in downtown Chicago so we could protest in front of Trump Tower. Show me that same energy in front of the U.S. senators here in Illinois at their offices, or the U.S. representatives' offices. Show me that same energy. Show me that same energy, and this goes nationwide to all these people who are triggered by Trump, or is that all these people who are asleep have been getting fat off of brunch? Show me that same energy towards these politicians. Because we could blame Trump as much as we want, but Biden is allowing Israel to do this. So what is your excuse? Because I could see people who are so triggered by Trump saying we got to support Biden because Biden can bring in a peace deal. Biden knew about the bombings. 70 to 80% of Gaza is a moonscape. I have no idea how they're going to reconstruct that. And if you think Israel is going to let go of all that territory, you're insane. Because what does Israel have over Gaza? Everything that comes into Gaza has to get Israel's green light of approval, and that's food, water, medicine, anything, right? You think they're going to give that all up? They're not. So well done, Democrats. You played yourselves. Continuing on, regrettably, President Biden has provided that what appears to be unconditional or approved unconditional support for the Israeli operation. The letter states the Biden administration has been providing armaments, including 2,000-pound bombs, which have been used to flatten entire civilian neighborhoods, causing massive casualties, with a high ratio of women and children. You think? You think? The signers noted that Biden has asked far-right Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to minimize civilian casualties, but has threatened no consequences as Netanyahu has continued to ignore him. He's been giving him the middle finger. Middle finger like this. That's what he's been doing. Israel's also been accused of ignoring an order from the International Court of Justice to avoid genocidal acts in Gaza, where Israeli bombs, bullets, and a blockade have killed or wounded more than 112,000 Palestinians, including thousands of people who are missing and presumed dead and buried beneath the rubble of bombed-out buildings. Most of those killed have been women and children. Around 90% of Gaza's 2.3 million people have been forcibly displaced. People, most likely children and infants, are starving to death. And we've seen the videos. They are very difficult to watch. Biden, who early in the war declared his unwavering rock-solid support for Israel, is seeking an additional $14.3 billion in military aid for the country. The world's most one-sided fistfight. Seriously, how broke are they? They have to get so much money, which already gets nearly $4 billion annually from Washington. So not only did they get $4 billion annually from Washington, they need another $14.3 billion. Hey, what about the poor folks here in America? Well, we get nothing. Democratic president has also twice sidestepped Congress to fast-track emergency armed aid to Israel. As donors and activists, we have committed much time and treasure in helping increase the turnout of likely Biden voters, particularly among young voters and voters of color. Young people. People of color. There's a word that Biden and the Democrats want to share with you. It's called this. Suckers. You think you have a seat at the table? All that canvassing, all that energy of let's go Biden. He's still allowing Israel to bomb men, women, and children. And somehow, oh, he's better than Trump. Somehow he's better than Trump because Trump says mean things. He says mean things to trigger you. Oh, you're going to vote third party? You're going to vote independent? You're helping out Trump. No, I'm not. I'm actually voting with a clean conscience, okay? Because I don't expect Trump to solve the problems, and I sure as hell don't expect Biden to solve the problems. So how am I going to vote for probably what is going to be my last election to vote in? I'm going to vote third party and independent because at the end of the day, I want to sleep with a clear conscience. And number two, I want to piss off some liberals because nothing soothes my soul than angering a vote blue no matter who person. Continue on. The re-election of Donald Trump would be a disaster for our country and a bigger disaster for Israel and Palestine. And we fear that Gaza war is increasing the chances of that occurring, the signers said, because of the disillusionment of a critical portion of the Democratic coalition. The Gaza war is increasing the chances of a Trump victory because Trump is just so mean. So I want to pull up this video here. Shout out to Savvy Sabs. Black voters see other groups put ahead of the black community, regardless if a Republican or Democrat is president. If you still support the Democratic Party, now's the time to ask for concessions. So let's go ahead and pull this up here because, again, the Democrats, you're losing black voters. You're losing everybody. And this is the first time in a long time in which we're seeing key members of the great Democratic coalition break away as they should.
I wanted to go back to a comment you made earlier about how immigration could be potentially affecting black voters. I think that's a really novel, insightful observation, not something that's talked about so much. You know, immigration portrayed as a very, or concerns about excessive immigration or illegal immigration being coded as a very conservative or right-wing cause. Could you speak more to how that's impacting the black community?
Yes, so I've spoken to voters particularly in the Roxbury neighborhood in Boston. They're very upset about this. What has been said to me is that they see that the city is actually doing a number of things for the migrant community that they're not even willing to do for the black community. So that's been some of the frustration that they voiced. But it's not just Boston. This is happening in Chicago. This is happening in New York. I've seen a number of people actually interview black voters in Chicago who have had town halls about this as well. They're really frustrated and they said, you know, where's our free housing?
Mm-hmm. And we'll be talking about the Illinois primary very soon after this segment. But in Chicago alone, we are also seeing such a low turnout of support for Democrats. The Democrats aren't bringing in any fresh new faces. When I had Jamal Green on, when he talked about going to a Democratic event, a speaking event, when I had him on the show, not once but twice for this year, he told me, and you all can reference the interview. You guys can see the interview for yourselves. That it was filled with nothing but old people. And he asked them, well, where are the young people at? Because young people are not being engaged by the Democratic Party. They're only being engaged when they feel like, oh, hey, we need you to turn up because Donald Trump's saying these mean things. But they're not offering the next generation anything at all whatsoever. And as somebody who's lived in Chicago, just going to say this from my perspective, my point of view, the Democrats, who have a stranglehold over this city, have provided jack shite for the people of the city. And before anyone types in the comment section below and says, oh, you people voted for it, it's not how it happened. The machine took over. And the only reason why the machine has power is because there's a loyal voting base that helps maintain it. Now, the good news is that most of that base is kind of dying out and people aren't turning up as much to support the machine, but the machine still chugs along. So it's not that the people of Chicago voted for this. It's just people are burnt out, people aren't engaged, and the system is extremely corrupt. That's what I just want to make very clear about it. It's not that we voted for it. It's just the machine has control over everything. And we got to start placing our bodies into the gears and into the levers and start crushing it, because otherwise this machine will still keep chugging along. But that's a story for Chicago, and it's a story for another day.
Where's our free credit cards so that we can go out and buy food and supplies for our families? So I think what is happening is a lot of Black voters are seeing, regardless if it's a Democrat politician or Republican politician, other groups are being put before the Black community. And I think this could be the time where there could be some real concessions that could be made. My advice to people is, this is the time. This is the time to ask for real concessions. If you support reparations for American descendants of slavery, this is the time to ask for it. The same way that the Muslim community is withholding their vote for Joe Biden, and they're actually casting the uncommitted votes or no preference, which is what it was in Massachusetts. This is the time to ask for real concessions. And since Joe Biden is actually up for re-election, those concessions should be implemented prior to November, not another promise that's made to the Black community that is not fulfilled. So I sincerely hope that people would ask for some concessions for those who still want to support the Democratic Party. But me, ultimately, I won't support either party. I'd support third party or independent candidates, because I think the system as a whole has to change. And I think both of those parties are corporate and corrupt.
Thank you.
Well said. Now, besides losing voters, and this is something that's going to impact the Democrats the most, you have to inspire people. And the debates are going to be necessary for Biden, not so much for Trump. Trump has proved that, he can skip off and not attend the debate, especially with the Republican primaries, because all what they did was talk about him during the Republican primary debates. But Biden needs to show the American people that he still is somewhat aware. And by not having debates, it's going to put him in a bad light. I just want to pull up this video here about the speculation of, the fact that these debates probably won't happen. And so it's going to be up for perhaps maybe third-party candidates to capitalize on this. So I'll pull up this video here of Tulsi Gabbard. She's on another podcast. Now, there's talks about her being Trump's VP. I don't see that happening. But I do want to highlight the point where the debates are being brought up.
Rumored, we'll get to the bottom of it here, to be the potential VP pick for not one, but two presidential candidates. One came from D'Anthony Holloway himself.
Okay.
Thought you were going to run with RFK Jr. Now, I had read that as well, and it was a fun story at the time. It appears as if he's picked somebody as of yesterday, the entrepreneur chick who nobody's ever heard of but has a lot of money.
Which is kind of crazy. I mean, come on, RFK. What are you doing here? You're gonna pick somebody with money who's also has ties to Google. Surprise, surprise. I didn't see that one coming.
Correct.
Bryn something.
No, that was her ex-husband.
Oh, Sergey Brin was her ex?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Sergey Brin is one of the founders of Google.
Yes.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes.
Say it with me, folks. It's one big club, and you ain't in it.
Gotcha.
That explains
And
all the
Larry
money.
Page.
Yes, and he
Yes.
needs money apparently.
I don't know. Oh, RFK does. I was thinking of Sergey.
No, Sergey is
doesn't
all
need
set,
money.
I think,
Sergey
on
doesn't.
money,
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's fine, but RFK does.
Yeah, obviously running for president in any situation costs a lot of money.
I think the average candidate this year is going to spend $4 billion for the two major parties. It would last time was like 2.5 total, and that's including
total.
the
That
PACs and
includes the
everything,
super
yeah.
PACs
Yeah.
and all of
Yep.
kind of the. But to also, I mean, he's chosen a very hard path. It's hard to run for president in general. He chose a Democratic primary, then dropped out midstream and decided to run as an independent. And to run as an independent, you're taking on both political parties and the propaganda media and big tech and all of these forces who essentially profit and benefit from being a part of the cabal of the power elite. And so to have someone who's able to run a serious campaign as an independent is a threat to them. So the money thing and this is a whole topic in and of itself, but the money thing, as much as you might not like it, is a practical reality when you're essentially waging an information warfare, as they are.
Yeah, because it's costly.
Yeah.
And you got to get all these people on your side. You got to go out there and buy them out.
You have to, you've got to have, like, they ran a $7 million ad during the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
Debatable whether that was the best use of $7 million when you don't have a lot of money. But, that's what it costs. You got to get your name out there. You got to get your message out there. And what I found when I ran for president in 2020 was that, even on who knows if there's going to be presidential debates this year. That's a valid question, that this norm that's existed forever, it may not happen at all. And for a candidate like Bobby Kennedy, I know he's counting on and has been counting on being able to stand on a stage with President Biden and President Trump and have that opportunity to make his case to the American people.
Now, that probably won't happen unless something crazy goes down. Now, I say this because, remember, third parties, independent candidates, they have been dismissed by not only the corporate media, but by the two-party system. And Trump is somebody who will not embrace another podium on stage, because that's a chance for someone to maybe upstage him. Okay. And Trump has made it very clear that while he does want to face off against Biden and his team have made it very clear that they want Donald Trump to behave himself. Well, people aren't going to be tuning into the debates to see Donald Trump, put on a show, because that's who he is. But also, this is also going to shine a light on whether or not Biden is even capable of understanding or being coherent for 2 hours talking to not only the moderators or moderator, but even to Donald Trump. Now, if there's a third party stage there, let's say RFK Jr., the Greens and the Libertarians, and maybe to an extent, if Dr. Cornel West were to make it onto that stage, it's very clear that Biden would be out of his element. And this is the opportunity for third-party candidates to really make their voices heard and actually to go on to independent media, or either that, do their own independent third-party candidate presidential debate without Donald Trump or Joe Biden. So as far as I'm concerned, these debates, these candidates talking to each other, this will cost Biden. This will cost Biden numerous support, and people will not be enthusiastic enough to engage with the Democratic Party. I want to pull up the rest of this video here, so let's go ahead and play it.
Get that.
Oh, that's definitely not happening.
You don't think so?
No.
Well, do you
No.
think Biden will even sign off on any of these debates? Because if he doesn't, Trump's not going to.
I think
which means Bobby doesn't get a shot on stage.
There's an outside shot. They'll pump him full of Adderall like they did the other day for the State of the Union and let him go after it. But it's risky, man. I think it would be more likely than a direct one-on-one debate. It would be more town hall style where the moderators only ask questions. But Trump, right? He's just going to go off.
Yeah.
Right. And the debates are important, especially for a candidate who's trying to get their name out there. We'll go back to you, for example. That's how I found out about you.
Yeah.
When you were on stage going up against Kamala Harris and absolutely eviscerated her, overnight, everybody knew your name. Tulsi Gabbard, Tulsi Gabbard, Tulsi Gabbard. And you were the one who essentially got her to drop out of the presidential race.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. Now, I don't know what the real story was behind.
Okay, so what can we take away from this? What is a good way to end this segment? How can we make clear all this stuff that's being presented before us? Well, first, we said that this was going to happen. We said that Biden was going to have a cognitive decline way early on in 2023. But even before then, we saw so many videos, especially during the 2020 primary, of Biden stuttering and stammering and looking confused and being scared and out of his element, because he has been. That is an old man who's being led around. And as I've played on the previous episodes of Hard Lens Media, as I've read so many other articles, it is quite clear that Biden is being controlled. He's the one that's being told what to think and how to speak. As soon as he's done talking to people, he's then quickly ushered off stage, and that's it. No more questions. And even if he's there with the press, he says to the camera, with everybody watching, I got to be careful what I say or I'm going to get in trouble. You're the president of the United States. I didn't even see George Bush Jr. saying anything that dumb. But it's very alarming to me. And if there was to be a debate, just how coherent will Biden be? Democrats, you're going to lose the White House. But this is what you chose. And the thing is, the only way they could turn this around is what happens here in Chicago. It will depend on who is going to really take that initiative in the Democratic Party to maybe out Biden in Chicago. So between August 19th to the 22nd will be the DNC convention here in Chicago. We here at Hard Lens Media will be covering it. It'll be at the United Center in the McCormick Place. And we will give you guys updates about what's happening on the ground here, because there's no way that the Democrats can follow through with Biden and assume that they got the White House in the bag, because that's not how it's going to work out.